So 2019 was that pivotal. I think when I bought my property as an Ato, you managed to change your circumstances.
Yeah.
So why didn't you help other people do it? The funny thing is, I actually did start off as a podcast. It was just to, like, I'm just going to talk by myself to YouTube. The thing is, when you're new to content creation, you're so ignorant. You have an idea of what you think it will be. I think you think it'll be easy. You think, oh, this is going to be... But as soon as that camera turned, the amount of sweat is about showing up, being consistent. And you are, by doing it, what you don't understand is you are refining yourself over time. But this is true for anything that you do in life. You have to be able to willing to learn the business side of podcasting. You have to be able to willing to learn the creative side of podcasting. There are two parts to it that you're doing. You're wearing multiple hats. I want to be like Financial Times, but more in the, I would say, new media space, more podcasting, YouTube and stuff like that, because that's where a lot of our generation and generation after us, that's where they consume a lot of their content.
Hi Black Circle family, and welcome back for another episode. And I am, as always, your host Zoe, and today we're joined by financial educator and founder of the Savvy Wallet podcast, Ato Jay. Ato is known for breaking down money in a way that is practical, relatable and actionable. Ato has built a platform that empowers people to think differently about wealth, ownership and long-term security. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Zoe. I'm actually glad to be here. It's good to have this conversation, I should say, with you. So yeah, I'm very excited. Hopefully, I always say, I hope I can share as much value with your audience.
Yeah, of course. Sometimes we're having a chit chat and we're going to throw some knowledge in between, and so I'm going to jump straight into it and talk about like the foundations and the beginning, which is always the best place to start in the story, and where that financial mindset really began for you. So what shaped the earliest understanding of money and financial security for you?
Yeah, I was thinking about my earliest memories, and I think the earliest memories I had, thinking about it recently, and I've only said this on one other podcast before, is I was counting cash, actual physical cash for my mum. So my mum used to sell, in Nigeria, we call it lace, right? Which is essentially fabric that you use for, like Nigerian clothing that you have at like weddings and things like that. Not just even just wedding, just any kind of Nigerian outfit. She used to sell that, and she would make cash back then. I think this is not that cards didn't exist, but people wasn't really using cards as much at that point. So she would tell me, oh, count this. And it was big, large amounts, like count 1,000, count 5,000.
But she was making money.
She was making decent money. So I think that taught me that, okay, you make money by working hard, right? So I would say that my mom was a hard worker. She's a hustler. And I would say I probably got a lot of that entrepreneurship side as well from her. So I'd say that was probably the first earliest memory. Although I'll say on the other side, it's funny, looking back at it, I don't think we struggled for money personally, but there was always complaints about money. But I got everything I think I needed, if you get what I'm saying. So I didn't want, it's not like I was starving. We went on holiday. So I had a decent upbringing, but look, there was still a lot of complaints about money. And I think that was more from the management of what they had, my parents had. I don't think that they maybe manage it as well as they would have liked to. So yeah, that was the earliest side of it for me. And I think on the other side, I also, because of that lack of management, it made me become a spender. I was a spender. So I started working from as early as 16. But I would just spend my money and save. 16. I worked at Chesterton, moved on from Chesterton to a toy shop. Then I worked at Shoe, which still exists today actually.
It does,
Shoe with a SCHEH. For people that don't know. So I worked there for about 2 years. All that money didn't amount to nothing. I spent all of it, saved none of it. I had nothing to show for it. So yeah, I grew up with a spender's mindset.
And again, that lends itself to the conversations that are quite popular about financial literacy. And so, was there a defining moment that kind of pushed you from learning about finance to teaching it?
Yeah, I would say 2019 was the defining moment, because I left university not being so great with money. As I mentioned, I was a spender, right? Had poor credit. I was actually on a credit repayment plan, right? So that's how bad my credit was. And the reason why I got onto a credit repayment plan was because, and this is something that if anybody who's gone through uni has got a student overdraft, I got a student overdraft. It wasn't even a lot of money. It was like £500. I ended up using up to £500. Didn't really keep the account active. So they were like, okay, we're going to close the account and you're in default. And that really impacted my credit rating. It put me on, I then put in a repayment plan. So at some point, I think the point that made me really want to change things for myself was I went to a Sony store, wanted to get a tablet, failed the credit check, and I think that embarrassment was like, okay, I thought you need to like fix things up. But I also had a goal that I wanted to buy a property, and I think a goal really helps you to focus. It helps you to have that motivation to, it's essentially your why, right? Of why you're going to change. If you're not going to really change if you don't have something to motivate you, or you don't have an outcome that you can achieve. So wanting to, own my own property, I think it was a strong driver for me. And I managed to do that in 2019. And I think that complete 180 in change is actually, it'll be good. I want to do something on the side of my corporate job. It'll be good to maybe potentially talk about it. But it's funny, previously I did want to start a financial blog in 2017, but I didn't end up doing it. So 2019 was that pivotal. I think when I bought my property, I was like, okay, wow, Ato, you've managed to change your circumstances. Yeah. So why didn't you help other people do it? And that was the spark.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's quite a big goal, and you've managed to do it in such a short space of time, really, and kind of get that financial freedom for yourself in terms of like buying a house and all those type of things, which is fantastic. And it's just funny when you were talking about like student loans and just like the mismanagement and not really having any savings, or just like buying, I don't know, trainers or whatever it is. Like if there's anybody listening today in that position, what's one piece of advice you'd be like, okay, you it's probably your first job, you're fresh out of uni, or you're still in education. Like what's that one piece of advice that you would give them?
Okay, so if somebody's just like, they got their first job at uni.
They got their first paycheck, and it's like, they're
gas for it. Yeah, I think, you know what? I would say always put a portion for yourself. Whether it doesn't matter how big, just put something, because what you want to do is to start to develop a habit. So whether it's 10, 20, 30, 40, doesn't matter. The habit's the same, right? So I would say put something away from yourself, because if you do that, it's more than likely you will work towards, a financial goal that you have. If you don't do that, it's likely you'll just you'll get used to the whole paycheck to paycheck life. So I think it's, as they say, I think you have to start how you mean to go, really, is what I would say. So I would say put some of it aside. If you find it difficult, what I do to help me is have separate accounts. Have separate accounts. Put some sort of automation in place where, it automatically takes, I don't know, £20 or whatever you can afford, right, out of one account to put into another account that you can't touch. I think that's always useful. What you can do then is the details to that account, you can just go and hide it somewhere, so that it introduces friction for you to be able to withdraw. So if you're tempted to go and spend that money, you have to go through the whole process. Okay, what's my password? Also all of that. I mean, if you introduce a bit of friction, you're more likely to stick to, doing that, is what I would say for yourself. But on the other side, you also need to make it frictionless, I would say, for you to be able to move money around. Because if it's hard for you to do that, then you're not likely to do it, right? Like if it's like, I have to manually move myself, you're not going to do it.
So a bit of a fine balance.
Exactly. You have to do it on both sides. Yeah. Friction for you to stop yourself from spending it, but make it easy for you to save. I think that's how people should look at it.
Definitely. And no, that's good advice, especially for, like I was saying, like the younger, just learning their finances, and that's that pivotal moment of setting up good habits. So yes, that's really good advice for anyone listening.
Thank you. Yes, I hope so. I hope it is. And I think just start small. I started small. Honestly, like I will say to people, I think so before I got to the house, it was, okay, let me get a car. Save for a car. Okay, I've now got my car. Let me get to my first 1,000. Okay, let me get to my first 10,000, 15, 20. Just, it's small steps. You don't have to say, okay, I need to save 40k now. No, just start it small, and it'll grow over time.
Tangible.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move on to the birth of Savvy Wallet.
Okay, cool.
Have a little talk about that. And yeah, just doing my research and just knowing you and coming across your podcast. And I looked at the first episode where it was like, I did. It was like 5 minutes long. I think you was just maybe, I don't know if you was at home, but it was like a remote recording to how it's grown now. So let's go back to kind of the beginning and the gap that kind of made you want to launch the Savvy Wallet.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So Savvy Wallet, what made me... So, okay, I'll tell you what happened. So I was working at KPMG. This was 2020. Although in 2019, I bought my property, I was happy. Lots 2020. So I think it's around... It might have been Jan. I can't remember the specific date. It was 2020. And I was like, I want to do something else. I've always wanted to dabble into business. So I was like, I want to start another side hustle. I actually had started my very, very first side hustle, buying and selling toys in like late 2019. That's what got me into like entrepreneurship. So I think from doing that, it was easier for me to eat. I say easier. It wasn't complete like ease, but it was easier for me to think about starting Savvy Wallet. So had an idea, was in bed, I believe it was one Sunday. And I was like, okay, I've got all these ideas. It's like, do I continue buying and selling toys? Can I do Amazon? And then I was writing, I teach people about personal finance. I wanted to do something similar. 2017, why don't I start a YouTube channel? So that was where the idea came from. And then I started speaking to my wife about it, speaking to my friends about it at work. And I was like, yeah, it's a great idea. I think you should do it. Recorded that first video that you saw. I wasn't going to put it out. That first video. The funny thing is, I actually did start off as a podcast. It was just to I'm just going to talk by myself to YouTube.
Informational.
Yeah. And I recorded it on my wife's camera. So she had a camera and it was at my house at home. And then I recorded it. I did not have a clue of anything else. I did not know what I was doing. The thing is, when you use a content creation, you're so ignorant. You have an idea of what you think it will be. I think you think it'll be easy. You think, this is going to be... But as soon as that camera turned, the amount of sweat, it was mad.
Being in front of the camera, it's not easy.
It was so hard. And the edit was... I'm sure if people listening to go and watch it, the edit, it probably was poor. Everything was just like poor across the board. But I'm so glad that I released it. So many people encouraged me to... It's like, no, you have to release it. Because I wasn't going to. It's like, no, you have to. This is a good thing. And I fought the fear. Everything... All my fears that I had, I thought that nobody's going to watch it. People are going to think it's poor. All of these fears, even if any of those things were true, why does it matter?
Right.
I think the important thing is that I proved to myself that I can do what I say I would do. That was the important thing for me. Even if it didn't succeed, I would rather it doesn't succeed rather than have the question of what if I did that? So what if you did that? Right. So that was important for me. So that's how Savvy Wallet was born. I believe it was March 2020 is when I created my YouTube channel, but I didn't create it because of COVID. I know it was in that year, but it wasn't before that. I always had the idea to do it a few months before. So
and there's an actually important lesson about just getting it done. Just start and getting it done. I remember someone sharing with me, they were like, even when you're posting and no one's watching, that's the best time to make all your mistakes because nobody's watching. So just post it, don't worry about it, put it out into the world, get used to recording, get used to being on camera. So yeah, just do it.
It's very important. I think for me that doing that was one of the most important things. You said something important. I know we've got a question about it, but it's about showing up, being consistent, and you are... By doing it, what you don't understand is you are refining yourself over time. But this is true for anything that you do in life, right? When you do it, the more you do it, the better you get. You're refining yourself over time. I think a lot of us want this immediate reward for anything we do. But it's so funny. In education, that's not something that people are very happy to spend 15 years doing education and then you get your degree at the end of the year. People are very happy about that. But when it's anything else, we're always very quick to just drop it.
Yeah, it's so true. And did it always start out as, okay, this is going to be a bit of a passion project, or did you know it was always something that you planned to scale up?
I think I started it as I wanted it to be a side hustle. That was the idea that coming into it, but I was open-minded with it. It can get as big. I don't think thinking about it, I don't think I was thinking it will be that big. I was happy for it to be a side hustle or something. I think I think in the first few years, I was like, oh, if I get 1,000 subscribers, that's enough. But when you do the work, your goals get bigger and it, it goes over time. But yeah, it started off as it's a side hustle, and then over time, it kind of just grew. Well, I think my ambition grew because I saw the size of the problem. Oh wow, actually, this is a bigger problem than even I thought this would be. So that's why it grew more.
And then you've got like 50,000 subscribers on YouTube now. So the growth is
it's been crazy. Yeah, it's been crazy. I need to go back and check like what my original numbers were, but I think it was like I wanted like 10,000 in like 4 years or something like that at that time, and I was like, yeah, I'll be happy if I got 10K. So to be able to get 50,000, I mean, it's been a journey, I would say, but it's all consistency. Is what I would say to people. I've had my points where I was like, is this gonna grow? Is it gonna get to where it's got to? But what I did was I made sure that I showed up, and I made sure that I was having the conversations that I wanted to have, and that's how I think by doing that, you know what, I believe this, when people see you working hard and people see you consistent, I feel like people gravitate towards that and they want to support you.
Yeah.
It's this weird thing that happens, right? When, they say karma, but I think karma can happen from a positive perspective as well. When people see you showing up all the time, week in, week out, they're like, yeah, I want to support this person. I want to support what they're doing. And they come to rely on you because they know like you're going to be there pretty much every week,
Yeah, yes. And you put your episodes out weekly on a Monday. If people want to make sure and tune into that. So no, we kind of touched about consistency. But, in the early days, what would you say it took to kind of keep that momentum? What were the things where you showed up?
Funny enough, like when I pivoted to the podcast so I started doing the podcast in July 2021, I was checking this, and I did it between July 2021 and December 2021. And then I took a 4-month break. I didn't come back until April 2022. I just think I underestimated podcasting at that point. Underestimated it. I wasn't ready. I was like, what's my goals with this? What am I doing? I was feeling burnt out. So I wasn't consistent straight away, but I think taking that break allowed me to reevaluate it, and also allowed me to think, do I really want to do this? How am I going to do this? How can I better plan this? So I wasn't always consistent at the beginning, and I think it's okay for people to not always be consistent straight away, as long as you eventually get to a point where you're comfortable and you're consistent. I think that's important, because it's not perfect. We're not perfect people, right? And sometimes, to be fair, I think Stephen Bartlett talked about the same thing, and his podcast is huge. He wasn't consistent straight away. But I think sometimes you need that to happen to be able to figure out, is this something? Because when I actually missed it, when I wasn't doing it, I was like, wow, I actually missed doing the podcast. That was 1. 2, people were still listening to it. Although at that point, it wasn't like I was getting a lot, but people were still listening to it. I was like, wow, people are listening. I haven't done this for 4 months and people are listening. And it wasn't big, by the way. I wasn't like huge, but people were listening to it. So like, wow, okay, people are listening to it. I actually miss having the conversations. Okay, how can I better make this work for me, right? So some of the things that I did was, for example, okay, let me make sure that I'm like 4 episodes ahead, because I think early on, while it was difficult for me to be consistent, was because I was like, if I was to release an episode next Monday, I was like recording the week before. It was just chaos.
Yes,
chaos. And I really underestimated that. So I thought, okay, let me have a bit of a backlog. Let me have like 4 weeks, 5 weeks or something like that, right? In terms of planning, let me try and plan the schedule a bit better. So I think doing some of those tweaks allowed me to be better, more organized. Doing a podcast, you have to be organized, unfortunately. Like you have to be, if you're not organized, it's tough. If you don't have a team around you, if you're doing it by yourself, you got to be organized. So yeah.
Oh, 100%. And also know that you can put a portion of your time and know that you have the time, because it's more time consuming than people realize.
It's very time consuming.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it probably takes me, I was calculating, it probably takes me for an episode anywhere between 14 to 16 hours per episode. Yeah. That's a lot. It's a lot of hours. Yeah.
And so I want to kind of talk about the evolution of Savvy Wallet. And the platform. And so what do you think changed between that first episode and the platform that we see today?
What changed? I would say a lot has changed since the first episode. I would say the most important changes is the consistency. You sure? I'm definitely way more consistent than I've been in previous years. But the reason for the consistency is because I've put things in place. As I mentioned, right now I said 4. Now I've got a backlog of 6, 7, and I'm constantly trying to increase it. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So by doing that, it means I'm not scrambling. If it gets cancelled, if I get sick or something happens, I'm not having to like scramble. So I'm like 3 months ahead in terms of content, right? And it gives you also the flexibility to, okay, actually I released this, and you also can get ahead if you know, if you've got your content edited, ready. You can schedule it way ahead so you're okay in case something happens 1 week. So I would say consistencies happen. Attention to detail is way higher. But that comes with time because you learn. It's about testing and learning, right? You understand what conversations work, what conversations don't work, what parts of conversation work, what do people resonate with as well. You start getting that attention to detail as well. I say it's quite important. And then I would say that content strategy is important.
Yeah.
Every year I have an idea of the direction of where I want the podcast to go, and the high level points of conversations that I want to have. But you have to be flexible because things happen in the world, and it's just a strategy, right? Your strategy might be wrong. So you might say, okay, actually, let's have this conversation, and it doesn't work out. Actually, it's not buying like you think it needs to. So you need to be able to pivot. But I think it's always good to start the year with an idea of what you want to happen. So the year where my podcast blew up, that was a strategy. I had a strategy. I had a strategy. So my strategy for that year, I was like, okay, 2023, the numbers are growing steady. 2022, they're growing decent. Okay, 2024, I need to, how do I elevate even more? So I was like, why don't I try to, it was like, I'm not going to lie to you, it was like I had an 8-point strategy. One was, okay, let me try and get high profile guests. You test this is your thesis, right? Let me get high profile guests. Let me get people that they don't need to be high profile, but they're very knowledgeable and in their area, and let it be a subject that is a wide subject. So for me, it was like, okay, let's talk about UK tax system. Let's talk about credit. Let's talk about pension, right? 3 was, why do we combine that both? High profile. And I might not have been able to achieve all of these strategies. These are things that I will try to attempt to do. So why don't I do both somebody who's high profile and knowledgeable? So that's the example of some of them. And I test those strategies. And the one that worked was number 2. That's what worked well. And that's what got me my viral episode. But it's something that I started intentionally with the year that, okay, this is something I'm going to test and see if it works, and it aligns with what I'm doing in my podcast. And that's what blew up that year. But every year I have a different strategy of where I'm going or what I'm doing and where you kind of want the podcast to kind of go. So so that's what I did in 2024, and it blew up. And
it's important, isn't it, to have that, to be intentional and to have strategy in place, because I know there are some, I mean, look, if your goal is not to blow up and be viral or have a large platform, then that's fine if it's just about the conversation. But if you do want more visibility, I guess it's about really putting that strategy behind what you're doing and not just like free falling. And
you have to have a strategy. Actually, you just remind me, some of my other strategies was, okay, how am I going to market it? Okay, I'm going to market it by chopping X amount of clips on I'm going to do this. So it's different. There's different ways, but nobody teaches you any of this stuff when it comes to podcasting. You have to figure this stuff out. But it's like you said, you have to be intentional. Yes, you can blow up accidentally. It can happen. But it's more likely that you have to think about what your path to growth is. It's just what it is. You have to think about what it is and just keep testing it. And it will change every year. That's just what it is. Podcasting is kind of like a business.
It actually is.
The business is a business.
I'm going to talk a bit later about how we monetize it, and if you want to monetize it, So we'll come on to that. But it definitely is, and it's been a lesson for me as well. Somebody who is just quite creative and I just want to come and have the conversation, but actually I feel like the conversation deserves like an audience. It's like, how do I get it from where it is now to growth? And yes, you really do need to have a bit of a business brain rather than just a creative brain.
Yeah, it's a shame that it's like that, but it's just how it works, right? Yeah.
And I know we've kind of touched on this already. We were just speaking about the moment that you had a viral clip. And I wanted to touch on, when did you realise it was, something bigger? So let's talk about that viral moment. What was the episode or?
Yeah. It was with Benedicta. Shout out Benedicta for that episode. We always talk about that episode. So it was talking about UK tax system. That year, I think my idea to have the conversation with her was, okay, we've got the tax year coming up in April. It will be good to talk about, okay, how do people prepare and prepare before and after? What are the things that they kind of do? And nobody was really talking about tax. And I think people have this preconception that, tax is boring. And with my podcast, I try to make these conversations as engaging as possible. And Benedicta was a great guest because she's able to really like break these things down in an engaging way, in a conversational way. So she was a good person for me to have that conversation with. So that episode was about breaking down the UK tax system, but she did it in a way that made people think, oh, wow, actually, so this is how the tax system works. And I think that kind of, what's the word I'm looking at? Like that discovery from people. I guess people they kind of just saw it like, I'll say, oh, okay, I have to pay my taxes. But she explained it in a way of the why behind it. And this is how it's working. And this is why they do it. And I think that really opened people's eyes to, oh, wow, okay, I need to really think about like, how do I manage my money within this tax system? And I think that resonated with so many people. I think the episode at this point is just under 600,000 views on YouTube. So yeah, it did very, very well. And
is that your most watched episode?
Most watched, yeah. So it's crazy, to be honest. Like I remember, what's so crazy? Like, when we, before we had the conversation, like, we were just both saying, like, because it was like a day like today, like, it was cold outside, it was raining, and we were both pretty tired. I'm not going to lie to you. We were like, both tired. It was like, but it's good to see you. It's good to have, it's going to be good to have this conversation. And I'm not going to lie to you. I did not think it would go viral. I didn't think it would resonate with so many people because I felt like I was already having great conversations with people. But yeah, that conversation resonated with people. So that was the viral moment, and from there the podcast, that's when that really elevated the podcast into the limelight, and we've grown since then.
Yeah, something about the timing, the topic, the chemistry, like all of those lovely ingredients coming together and just creating that viral video.
It was the right time. I think people were disgruntled with money at that point. People were disgruntled about money. I think people were disgruntled about the UK.
We always are.
Oh yeah, we always are, right? And I think that plus the delivery of it, but also saying we kind of understand what you're going through. We're all going through it too. I think that relatability and the fact that we're breaking it down to you in a very simple way, I think that's what really resonated with people.
Love that. So how do you think your voice as a host has evolved over these years?
I would say that for me... I'm excited. People will see it in the podcast. I'm an excited person. I'm passionate about what I talk about. So I think very early on, I'll get comments like, this is a good podcast, but yeah, you need to like stop interrupting the guest. So I was I'm very excited, but I would say I'm more measured. I'm more measured in what I am. I take the time to listen. I don't really interrupt the guests. I will listen to them. But also I make sure that I input as well. It's not just me asking the guests. I'm also putting my take on a topic and my thoughts on a topic and my experience on a topic. So I'll say that's how I'm involved. I'm not just like a question asker. I'm also participating in the conversation and I'm also giving you my views on it as well. And I think that makes it a lot more relatable. I'm also a real person as well. So I'm also shedding lights on my perspective because I work. So I always talk a lot about, how I'm experiencing, whether it's like a salary rise and stuff like that. I will talk about it. I want to talk about the specific, but I will talk about how I'm feeling about it, or if it's the tax system, I'll talk about how I feel it's impacting me and relate. So I think really good hosts, that's what they really should do. Is not that it always just asking the question. They're also, giving their take on it as if they're being asked the question as well. I think that's very important.
Yeah, you're bringing your own lived experiences, your own expertise to the conversation, which is, a different point of view. And again, I know we're going quite back to the conversations a little bit, but we touched on discipline and we touched on consistency.
Yeah.
And, people love the idea of podcasting, but not the commitment. And we've touched on discipline a little bit and consistency. So were there any moments you wanted to pause or step back? And I know you mentioned that you had a bit of a break, but were there any moments outside of that? Or was that just that one instance where you were like, I'm going to take this 4 months out?
I had another break actually. I checked. So I believe I had another break it might have been 2023. But I think each break or each, let's say, challenge, you are challenging yourself to think about what can you change over time, like what are the little tweaks that you've done over time. But I would say, thinking about it in terms of, and I've mentioned this, the podcast isn't out, but I've mentioned this before, I kind of thought about it. There's like a 4 kind of part framework in terms of, I think, where I've become consistent, right? I'll say, sorry, let me share. Let me just give a quickly. Okay, that's another. Yeah. So I would say stage 1 was a spark stage, and I think most people get that spark, right? They're very excited about doing something. So for me, of course, I was very excited about podcasting. This news, novels, like, well, what's this cool like new thing? You're so excited about doing it. You're so excited about who's going to listen to it? Like, how is it going to grow? Right? You're very excited. So that early energy is what keeps you going initially, and then the discipline stage, which is stage 2, that's the stage where you start putting processes in place. And for me, those processes in place, as I mentioned before, was right, okay, how do I get myself ahead? Do I have a calendar full of guests for the next 8 weeks? Have I sent them the invite? And something that I'm doing new at the moment is, and actually it took for you to do this, I do what I call a pre-podcast chat with my guests. Yeah. I got that. One of my guests actually suggested that to me. Ato, actually, like, you should, before you record with a guest, like, set a call with them. I was like, that's a great idea. So I used to I would write my questions and I'll say, what topics? But a lot of it will be by myself. But now I kind of pre-plan with them, have a conversation with them and share the ideas. So I'll have a conversation with them, and that works too. Why works quite well is that you break their ice, you get to know them first, they get to know you, especially if you've never met each other. You break that ice, you get to know each other. And then the second thing is you get the alignment and you get a feel for what kind of person they are. Okay, I can ask this, you can ask them that. You can also pick topics from the conversation you have. If there's anything in their bio, right, you're able to then and then feed that back into the question. So that's something that I do. So all these little processes have become part of me being disciplined. And then I'll say by doing that and showing up and showing out, I think when you book there's this funny thing that happens. I think when you book in guests, you have to show up. You can't not show up, right? So when you're doing that forces you to be disciplined. That's like a motivation for you. And especially if you're always 8 weeks in advance, you're just going to keep on doing it, right? And then over time, that morphs into is now, you're now kind of essentially like responsible, right? We're responsible for, not only the fact that you're producing this content, but people are now watching what you're doing. So essentially you owe them, not in money, but you owe them in the fact that they're supporting you. So you want to make sure that you continue to show up for them, and then they'll show up for you, right? And then I'll say from that responsibility stage, it becomes your identity. Once you do it long enough, it's who you are. It's what you become. It's not something that you even think twice about. I don't think twice about it. Is what I do, is what I become. Is it? And that is true for anything that you learn, right? If you want to become an engineer, right? You study, you do all of this. You pretty much go through all these stages, right? And then you are then an engineer, right? It's the same thing for if you're doing podcasting or anything else that you say. But that's the kind of stages that I say I got to make me consistent.
Hi, Black Circle family. I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. It would really mean the world to me if you could take 2 seconds just to like, follow, subscribe and share, and really help me to build this community and keep the conversation going. Thank you. Yeah, it becomes an extension of yourself, essentially, when you've done it long enough. And I know, you know, the podcast space is so oversaturated at the moment.
You think so?
I think so.
Yeah.
Do you not? I feel like...
Yeah, yes and no. Yes, I think that there are, you're right, there's a lot of people doing podcasts. It's like everybody wants a big podcast. That's true. But I think that there are definitely areas where people can start podcasts and show themselves and add value. I think it's about where can you add value. I mean, that's what you need to be thinking about when you're creating a podcast. Not that you can't like create a podcast in a place that's not already saturated, but it might be more challenging. So you want to create it in a valuable place. But yeah, you're right. It can be. I see this thing as like, it's like anything in this life, right? I think if people see people making money from something, see people being successful, you see the Diary of the CEOs, you see the Caller Daddies, all these kind of podcasts that are doing well, the Joe Rogans that are huge. It's natural that people would want to step into
it's a little gold mine, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly, gold mine. But I believe that there are people, no matter what it is, they'll cut through because they think they take it seriously, ultimately.
Well, I say that to say, what do you kind of think separates the podcaster who lasts from those who disappear? So again, like I say, you're coming into the saturated space. There's a lot of... I have a conversation with people like maybe every other week. Oh, I'm going to start a podcast. I'm thinking to myself, do it, but just go into it with your eyes open. So yeah, what do you think kind of separates the people who have longevity?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I was doing some research on it, and so there's this publication or news channel, like podcast news channel called Pod News. So they were saying that, so this was in a Forbes article, and they were saying that if you like do more than, I think it's approximately 30 episodes, then you're on the top 1% of, you know, podcasters. So it really shows you that a lot of people start it and they don't, you know, they're not consistent, and they, you know, they don't follow through. I would say what separates somebody who does this at a, you know, good level is that I think they understand what they're getting into.
Yeah. Yep.
Too many people, I think, get into podcasting casually because they see the Diary of the CEOs, they want that, but they don't want to put in the hard work. I think it's the wrong way to come into it. I think it's the wrong way to say, I want to be big. If you come into it with that mindset, you're going to fail very quickly because you don't really have an idea of why you're doing this. What is it for?
The why.
Outcome,
the why.
Right?
Yeah.
What's the output of me doing this? The output of what you're doing this is so you can get 30 million followers. You'll quit very quickly because you ain't getting 30 million followers immediately. It's going to take a bit of time. So I say a lot of people don't have an understanding. They're leading by ego. Yes. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's an ego thing for them. They want to, people see me.
Yeah, content creators, they want the followers and the recognition. But for my understanding coming into it, I always knew it was going to be a marathon and not a sprint.
Exactly.
And also, I think same with you, it's about the message that I wanted, but that was my why and the community that I wanted to build from it. Yeah, it's fun. Every podcast has their niche. You can hop on there and talk the most amount of rubbish if you want to, but I think it's but just understanding like what your community is and building from that. That was my why, I guess.
It's important. It's good for you to say that because you're right. Somebody's, I suppose, somebody's could say, I want to make people laugh. That's valid. That's valid. At least you're coming into it knowing what outcomes you're trying to achieve from it. But if it's like, I want to make 10,000, it's not going to keep you, unfortunately, because it takes way too long to be able to get there. And also, it's time consuming. You have to do this for free for a little bit. You have to spend money, by the way. Plus, it's not free.
Oh, yeah.
You have to, even if you do it at home, you have to get the equipment.
Yeah.
So it's not free. So you have to, I think people need to be mindful of what they're getting into it and take it seriously. Take it seriously as if you got a job offer.
Yeah.
Right? If you take it as seriously like that, I promise you, I can't promise that you will get the results, but what I can promise is that you will be consistent because you've taken it seriously. Like as if, for your job, if you're getting paid, you're consistent, right? You know you're getting paid, right? So I would say if you know your why is like you getting paid, essentially, right? Because you're doing it for that why. So that I would say that's one reason. The second reason, and is like what we said before, business. Podcasting is business, and unfortunately, I can't completely blame people if when they do it, they drop off, because you're not taught business, you're not taught how to create a podcast, and it needs both, right? So you have to have the kind of mindset that is willing to learn. You have to be able to willing to learn the business side of podcasting. Yeah. You have to be able to willing to learn the creative side of podcasting. There are two parts to it that you're doing. You're wearing multiple hats.
Oh, yeah.
Sales, marketing, creative, editor. You have to be okay and willing to be able to get your hands dirty and a lot of pies. If you're willing to do that, again, you're going to see something from it, but you have to be able to willing to do that. If you're not willing to do that, then maybe you have a lot of money that you can hire those people. But if you're somebody that doesn't have that, you are your own resource in a way. You're your own energy. So I'll say the business side is very underestimated, unfortunately, because what's the lifeblood of a podcast is that it's going to need to generate some form of revenue, right? For you to be able to continue, because you don't want yourself. I mean, you could spend obviously from your work, and I did that for a while. I was spending like using salary from work for a little bit, not too long actually. I was quite fortunate, not too long, and then you end up spending that, and then at some point you might want to pivot. So that business side, you can't neglect it.
You can't neglect it. If you're thinking long term, you can't. And actually, that's a really nice segue. And about thinking like an owner, and treating it, as we said, as a business. So when should a podcast start thinking beyond content and towards monetization?
That's a good question. Where should you think about monetization?
Is there a point where
you're
like, okay, let's shift now, or for you, if we can think of your own experience, where the shift was, okay, this is the point now where...
I would say if you could do it from the beginning, great. Start thinking about it from the beginning, because if you start thinking about it from the beginning, you can start getting used to pitching to brands, being able to cover the cost, because if you're able to cover the cost of it early, it's more likely you'll continue rather than your own pocket. So if you can start, I would say personally, from the beginning, if you can. Now, I understand that's probably not easy, because it's like, okay, Ato, how do you get a brand to believe?
Just asking that as well, yeah.
How do you get a brand to believe in you? Okay, so to be fair, I've never actually spoken about like monetization, and actually I think this will be valuable for people, because I've gotten so many sponsorships, like a lot. Even when I was small, by the way. So people be like, oh, Ato, you got 50. No, I got it when I had 1,000. Yeah. So what I would say to people now thinking about it, I think what's important to be able to communicate to any brand, I'll say if you, let's say you start a podcast and you've got maybe a few episodes, but you're not big, right? I'll say the brands that you probably would want to reach out to are brands that are completely aligned with what you're doing. It's not just random. It's not like, okay, I'm a finance podcast and I reach out to Apple. That's not the time yet, right? At that point, it should be fintech. It's really aligned. It makes sense, because for them, even if they get one or two users at that point, it's aligned, right? It's more aligned than them going to a podcast that has nothing to do with finance. So it's going to be a better match for them, so they're more likely to work with you, right? That from a perspective of a niche, I would say. So I'll say it's first really looking for brands in your niche. The second thing is trying to put together a proposal. So that's what got me my first sponsor. I had a conversation. I reached out to them on Twitter at that point. They said, okay, reach out via this email. We had a conversation. I talked about Savvy Wallet, what I was doing with it, what my mission was, which is, really to help 100 million people level up in their finances. So I talked about that mission and what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to do with the podcast, what I'm trying to navigate. And then after that call, I said, I'll send them a proposal. So then I sent them a proposal of, okay, so, I would be able to work with your brand in this way. So it'll be like a place I had in doing this. And, I'll do it this way. And I'd also include your logo here. And it was just like all these things that I would like do for them.
Yeah.
I'd also include, I'll do like so-and-so clips and it'll include a logo. So it was all this kind of stuff. I offered way more than I could because it was my first sponsor.
Yeah.
And I knew that getting that first sponsor was very important because once I had, the revenue from that, I'm then able to like fund 1 or 2 years worth of the podcast. But now, in terms of how my proposals have changed or how I've now got media decks and sponsorship decks and stuff like that. And I could talk a little bit about like how it's evolved from that. So now, I'll say, in terms of my sponsorship deck, what I have in that is first is like literally about Savvy Wallet and what my goals are and what my missions are and stuff like that. And I think it's very important to have a mission of what you're trying to achieve because that's how you connect it to the brand that you're working with. And then from that, I then talk about how I'm different to everybody else.
Important. Yeah.
My differentiators. Yeah. I'm different because I'm disruptive to the finance industry in this way. I'm one of X podcasts at this scale and this and that, right? So my differentiators. And then the third one is how I can provide value to you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Is what I then add. I do all of that before I even talk about my demographics, right? How do I add value to you? And I think if you're able to pitch stuff in that way, then you're able to, sometimes a numbers game, sometimes you might have to reach out to a few brands, but that's how you essentially will. And there's a number of ways you can monetize, right? You can obviously include an ad, you can do a reel, you can do user-generated content, which I've done before. So user-generated content is where you will create an ad for a brand for them to use on their channels. You don't pay it on yours, and they'll pay you to just create it. Yeah, so that's what licensing. Yeah, brand licensing. So have you seen the Netflix deals for Breakfast Club? So the Breakfast Club, their full episodes are on Netflix because Netflix is licensing.
Right.
So it's paying them to licensing. And I think it's exclusive. So they've obviously paid them for it to be exclusive on Netflix, but they still have their clips on YouTube to promote it. So they're still making revenue on the YouTube side, probably making revenue on Spotify, Apple.
Yeah.
And making revenue on Netflix. So licensing is another thing. It's not so big yet because I think podcasting is still new, but that's something you'll see more of. So licensing, UGC, obviously brand partnership. Sometimes if you're across several platforms, they might just want you to just create a reel on Instagram or TikTok. So that's another way. Affiliate links as well. So sometimes you can do like a combination, which I've done before. So you'll do like, okay, let's do a fixed fee of X amount plus every customer that signs up give you a certain amount as well. So that's another way you can sell your own products, which I encourage people to do. I don't sell mine own, but I'm thinking of like services that I might offer in terms of like helping people like grow a podcast because I've grown mine to 50,000. So you can offer products, you can offer services, you can push people to your mail list. There's a plethora.
I thought that would be super lucrative, like how to offering services to grow a podcast. I don't think I've seen that service out there. Have you? I don't know.
No, because I guess the biggest podcasters are gatekeepers.
They don't want to do that. They don't.
They always share it. They will not share. They've got their thingy and they want to print at it. But I'm happy to do it because I think more people need to be able to. I think more people should be able to grow as podcasts. I think the industry is a tough industry, and it's so murky. People don't really know how. I had to learn by trial, and I was quite fortunate that I did. But it's very tough.
You're preaching to the choir. It's tough, definitely. And so I know we've spoken about kind of like the monetization side of things, but in your view, what makes a platform valuable? Like where do you think the value, what really drives the value for audiences?
Drive the value for audience. I think is just making sure that what you're talking about resonates with your audience. So I think I have an idea of who your audience is. So I know for me, my audience is, that young corporate entrepreneur person. You know, my audience actually is quite wide, wider than I thought it'd be. So my age group is between 25 and 65, by the way.
Okay, yeah.
But my biggest age group is between 25 and 45. So that's the core group, right? Core age group. I know that they're corporate people wanting to do well in the corporate world, but I also know that the entrepreneurs wanting to do well, you know, in entrepreneurship, but also wanting to be able to build wealth. So I think it's understanding your customer profile is what they will say. What's your ideal customer profile? Understanding what your audience is and think about this conversation for my audience. Like it goes back to your content strategy. Yes, I talked about the tax system, but I also understood that that's relevant to my podcast. This is Savvy Wallet podcast. So yes, that's my strategy of talking about it. It's going to attract the people that I know will want to listen to this and will want to listen to this every week. So I think it's really have an understanding of what drives them. Don't have random conversations. Like, not to say you can't. Sometimes you can to grow. I think it's important to like have something maybe adjacent. So I've talked about health in the past, not too often because I know it's adjacent. Like, you know, for you to be able to perform your best financially, you need to be healthy. It's quite important, and people likely will. But I wouldn't like talk about something completely random, if you get what.
Yeah, of course, like sports or
I wouldn't like do an episode on Arsenal support. I wouldn't just do like a football. Really? Yeah, but I wouldn't do like a you know, like on Arsenal, for example, and just like do a particular thing about that. That would be just like so left field, and not that maybe people don't listen to that, but they're not coming to my podcast for that, right? So I think it's just important to know.
Yes, definitely. And again, we spoke about infrastructure, building that and visibility. But if you had to choose like your first starting point, should creators focus on visibility or infrastructure? Like if you had to choose, I know ideally it like both of them, but if you had to choose the starting point.
Okay, so starting point of the podcast itself, right?
So should they focus on visibility first or should they focus on infrastructure first?
Infrastructure. I think if you set yourself up to be sustainable, I think the visibility will come along the ways. If you are just focused on getting views, but you don't know what that views can do for you, and you've got no system behind it, you will falter. And it's not guaranteed that you're going to get views every week at the end of the day.
No.
Some days it's going to be up, some days it's going to be down. Right. But if you've got a system that you know you can be consistent every week and you're able to produce a podcast, whatever your cadence is, whether it's bi-weekly, monthly, whatever, be able to be consistent in that way, it's more likely you'll be successful than trying to chase the next hot trend. I think having a system where it's working for you is way better. Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. I'm going to switch gears a bit and talk about legacy building. So when you look ahead, what are you building towards?
What I'm building towards, I'm building a media empire. That's what we're planning to do. So Savvy Wallet, we want to continue growing that as much as possible, but there's other shows I want to invest in and help to develop. That's got nothing to do with me. I think it's important to be able to help, like I said, help other people. Aside from help people do their own independent thing, but also help build and I would say support what I'm doing with Savvy Wallet. So that's where I'm like looking to go towards. I want to be as big as Financial Times. I've said that. That's what I want to do, but I want to be like Financial Times, but more in the, I would say, new media space, more podcasting, YouTube and stuff like that, because that's where a lot of our generation and the generation after us, that's where they consume a lot of their content, on YouTube. And whatever the new platforms will be, I will make sure that we move towards that if there's something beyond YouTube. So that's one side of it, the media empire side of it. The other side of it, as well as that, I have I've got series ideas that I want to do. There's things that I want to do on that side.
Relating to finance or completely different?
There'll be fictional stories, fictional series. Yeah. It's all, for me, the way I look at it, I always look at gaps in the market. So for me, Savvy Wallet was a gap in the market not only in the Black community, but just generally, right? So for me, I was like, okay, Black media, look at, we've got comedy covered, we've got sports covered. What about finance? What about history? So it's all those kind of things. Like, how do we fill in those gaps as well so that we can have a variety of conversations and a variety of content that we consume? You know, you always hear people say, oh, we always create the same thing. And I think the reason why we create the same thing is because I'm not in Hollywood and I've never worked in Hollywood, but I consume that they don't want to take the risk, right? They want to do something that's going to work for sure. So if you can take the risk, new players like me, who I'm happy to try something different and do something different. So I'll say that's probably the media side of what we want to do. And then I want to expand into Africa. What I'm doing, I want to expand it into Africa. That's always been aspiration for me. Africa is important. Because I'm Nigerian, Sierra Leonean, so, Africa is a very important place for me. There's other things I want to do. So that's Savvy Wallet. And then at some point, that's the media side. And at some point, investments, definitely, I'm an investor. So that's what I do. And very interested in that. So looking to definitely invest in companies, not only in Africa, but companies here as well. So there's a lot that I need to do and I want to achieve. I've even got games that I want to do the Savvy Wallet brands that I've thought up. So that's a vision. But essentially, really, the core mission is really helping 100 million people really just level up in their finances. And I was looking at it, it's like, is it a big goal? It's not that big of a goal. It's only 1% of the population. It's not huge, right?
Right.
And this is something that everybody needs to have. So actually, maybe I should make it 8 billion, but I'll start off with 100 million and then from there. Yeah.
But you touched on something really important, and when we're talking about ownership. Being a Black media owner, you get to tell new stories. Yeah, that's just not breaking through in Hollywood. Exactly. You get to put new voices that is so desperately needed in the media landscape. So that's really important, and
super important. Yeah. For me, I feel like I'm doing God's work. I feel like God has definitely put me in a position to not just help people in terms of their finances, but also help people that are trying to get themselves, exposure and get opportunities. Because one of the things that I've noticed, especially if you look at business and personal finance podcasts, unfortunately, is that there's not many Black, personal finance podcasts, which is why when, your podcast is great, because I think doing things like this, there needs to be more of us doing things like this. And I think it's important for us to, have this array of conversations. If you look at the Spotify top 50, it's all people that look the same and, it's the same perspective and it's not different stories. So I think it's important to have, diverse conversations for sure. And I'm a supporter of that. And I'm, very happy to keep pushing that, and I think it's important to do that. Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted you on this podcast, because of what you do with your platform. Like you said, there isn't much kind of in the space of finance or whatever else it might be. It's always very kind of small. So that's why I was like, this is just a great conversation to have, and how he was able to build that as a Black man and just enter that space of finance that's very tough. I was going to say, well, let's talk about that a little bit.
It was tough. I mean, I didn't have, from the podcast perspective, I didn't have a blueprint. It's the truth. I had no blueprint to look up to be like, how do I grow this? I wasn't sure if there was enough interest. It's hard to know, right? On Instagram, I could see that the interest was there. But in the podcast space, I wasn't sure of if people was interested enough from a long-term space. And I guess, especially when you're new, you're still building that trust. But what I was willing to do, I was like, I'm happy to give the podcast thing 5 years. I'm going to give it a decent amount of time. Minimum I'm going to promise myself is 5 years. And then at that point, I could decide, do I still want to do it for myself? Have I seen the traction and things like that? But I knew I was going to do it for 5 years. I knew the why was, okay, I'm going to help people with finances. And I'm going to do that for 5 years. And then let's take it from there. So I had a very kind of open mind. But I'll say it was very, very, very tough. You do have your doubts. You but I had a support system. I had, people supporting me from joining the podcast in the early days. That's why you see a lot of those people that helped early, a lot of them, I bring them back on because, for me, it's like you support me when it wasn't so big. So I'm always going to have that love for you and I'll bring you back. Obviously, where the conversations align. I would say one of the most important things for me was the podcast wasn't that big, but I was at the Black Business Show. I think it's 2022 or 2023, one of those years. And somebody came up to me and the podcast wasn't big. And I was like, oh yeah, I listened to your episode. It was like a year.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember you. I listened to, and that's just that one person. And that really just really, made my day.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, wow, okay. So oh wow, people are listening, they're watching.
Yeah.
Watching you, man. And they remember.
Changes the game a little bit, doesn't it? Yeah.
Wow, they remember the episode from a year ago?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, okay. So this is actually having an impact. So yeah, I will say it was tough, but what kept me going is definitely, people like that coming up to me, supporting me, the early guests I had, my wife, my friends, all those people really got me going. And obviously I have to, I always have to, like I say, I have to always give it up to God because I was like, how did you continue doing that? How delusional were you to keep doing it? I had late nights. I had 3, 4 a.m., 9, 5 a.m.,
Yeah.
6 a.m., yeah. I've had nights where the episode's coming at 8 a.m. and it's storing at 6 a.m. I've had all of those. Yeah, I've done, honestly, whatever you can think about it, I've done it. I've had hard drives broken. I've had guests cancelled.
Oh, I've had it where it didn't even record.
I had that.
Or it cut out during half the recording. And
I've had that.
So it's, yeah.
I had that recently. Ooh. And I had multiple guests and one of them came from Scotland.
Oh no.
Scotland. No, the 5 Corrupted or something like that. One of the guests came from Scotland.
Oh no. What was the workaround for that? How did you...
We recorded again.
Yeah. You have to do it though.
I had to say it.
Yeah.
Sorry, but unfortunately we have to record again. That was a great conversation, but unfortunately we have to record again. So I've had all sorts of stuff. It's been a journey, but I think every kind of setback really teaches you something, right? You always learn, but ultimately I think you have to just get used to there's always going to be problems, but how do you kind of rise above it?
Yeah, the preparedness of it all. And just a quick shout out to the Black Business Show, because that's where I accosted you to come on the podcast, and you've been really gracious and thank you. But when we're talking about platforms that are so valuable to our community specifically, that is a
very valuable. Yeah, especially a whole shout out on, and I partnered with them last year, 2025. So I've been there 3-4 times, and it's great. It's great for meeting people like you. It's great for just really, I think, energizing yourself, especially if you feel is what I'm doing. Yes, it is. And meeting like-minded people is going to really propel you. And then you always learn something new from people's stories as well. I think it's important for us to talk about this, not just only the good thing, but talk about the pains so we relate to you, that, whatever you're going through and whatever you're doing, we feel it too. We understand that is, challenging. But what I would say to people who are, they're doing something and they're worried, just always go back to your why. What is it? Why are you doing what you're doing? And anchor off that. I know it's it sounds so cliche, but it's important.
It doesn't. I don't think it does. Yeah.
For you to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's that North Star. Okay, so before we wrap up the conversation, I like to do something called the full circle, and it's a bit of a reflection moment. Okay. So if you could offer one piece of insight either to the younger version of you just starting out or the future version of you still building, what would it be?
I would say the younger person, you should have started business sooner. I think those early years when you're naive, those are the times where you can make mistakes. In your 20s, I think that's the optimal time. Despite what people say, I think we've got it backwards. 20s in my head is the time where you experiment.
Right.
Do everything.
Get all the mistakes.
Everything out of the way, right? I've got this business idea. Do this. Oh, I want to travel here. Do it. That's when you do it, when you have no responsibilities. It's not the other. I'm not saying a corporate is a trap. I'm saying you can do both, but don't limit yourself at that time. it's so weird. We leave university and then the first thing we do is put ourselves in a box instead of exploring every and anything we can do. That's what I'd advise myself to have done that a lot earlier and been braver and not be scared of failure, because failure is necessary.
It is.
It's so necessary for you to grow. So that's the advice I would give to my younger self, because I started Savvy Wallet late, like actually, was I in my... Yeah, I was in my 30s, I think.
Yeah.
Started in my 30s, yes.
There's nothing wrong with that either.
Nothing wrong, but I wish I did start. Yes, you're right. I'm happy that I did.
Yeah.
But I also wish that, because a lot of the people in the industry that really inspired me, they were in their young 20s. Like, oh my God, like, look how young you are. You already started it. Like, and it's beautiful that...
I will say, though, alignment. So maybe you was meant to start it exactly when because you maybe had all of the wisdom and knowledge from the past and to implement it now. So it just all depends. It just all depends, doesn't it, on your journey? But
I think so. Yeah, I think it definitely is. Yeah, it's you're right in that I probably could have do Savvy Wallet then. Yeah. But maybe I could have done something else. But now, yes, you're right. My temperament, my maturity, all of that worked for Savvy Wallet, because I knew that if I'm going to commit to something, I would do it. Yeah.
Well, Ato, thank you so much for coming down and
appreciate you
taking the time out. If people want to follow you, where can they find you?
So you can find me. I've got like a personal professional page now, so you can find it's Ato Jay on Instagram. On the Savvy Wallet side, it's Savvy Wallet across the board. So Savvy Wallet on YouTube, which is my biggest channel, Savvy Wallet Instagram, and Savvy Wallet on TikTok. So there's a where you'll find me. And then my podcast, as Zoe mentioned, comes out Monday.
Amazing. Thank you. And guys, thank you so much for joining us once again. And you can find The Black Circle across social media, YouTube, Spotify, and Instagram. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Thank you.